10 toughest actors in Hollywood who actually lived as tough guys. Hollywood has always sold audiences the fantasy of toughness. Square-jawed heroes who save the day with their fists, unflinching warriors who never back down, rugged individualists who face down evil without breaking a sweat. For decades, the Dream Factory manufactured these images with makeup, stunt doubles, careful camera angles, and actors who went home to comfortable trailers between takes. Audiences watched these men dominate the screen and believed in their strength, their courage, their unshakable resolve, but a select few didn't need the Hollywood machinery to create toughness. They brought it with them from lives most of us can't imagine. Before they ever stepped in front of a camera, these men had already survived experiences that would break most people. They came to Hollywood not as actors playing tough guys, but as tough guys who learned to act. When you've worked with both types, you can see the difference immediately, explains veteran stunt coordinator Vic Armstrong, who worked in Hollywood for over 4 decades. Some actors learn to throw screen punches, others have to unlearn real ones. The guys with genuine backgrounds moved differently. There was no hesitation, no acting process. It was just who they were. You could see it in their eyes during fight scenes. They'd been in real ones. These weren't actors with martial arts training or gym memberships. They were men who'd survived poverty, violence, war, and streets where toughness wasn't a performance. It was survival. Their journey to Hollywood stardom required overcoming obstacles that had nothing to do with auditions or acting classes. These weren't just actors with interesting backstories or publicity-friendly origin myths crafted by studio departments. These were men whose scars told real stories, whose instincts came from genuine survival, and whose toughness predated their fame by decades. Their authenticity became their greatest asset, and the last name on this list might surprise you, because his wholesome screen image carefully concealed a past most people never knew about. Number 10. Charles Bronson, the coal miner. Charles Bronson was the granite-faced vigilante of Death Wish, Hollywood's go-to tough guy throughout the 70s and 80s. His weathered features and thousand-yard stare made him the perfect casting for men who'd seen too much and decided to fight back. Audiences believed he could handle any threat because something in his face suggested he already had. Behind that authentic toughness was a childhood of genuine hardship that Hollywood couldn't have invented. Bronson's background wasn't actor preparation, it was survival, notes film historian James Parrish. Born Charles Bukinski in 1921, in a Pennsylvania coal mining town, Bronson knew poverty before he knew comfort. When his father died, 10-year-old Charles went into the mines to help support his family of 15 children. The work was dangerous, the conditions brutal, the pay barely enough to keep them fed. His family's poverty was so extreme that young Charles once wore his sister's dress to school because it was the only clothing available. He genuinely understood what hunger felt like, what danger meant, what it took to survive when survival wasn't guaranteed. Those years in the darkness beneath Pennsylvania, breathing coal dust and risking cave-ins for pennies, forged a kind of toughness that no acting coach could teach. When Bronson finally made it to Hollywood decades later, directors recognized something authentic in his face, the look of a man who'd already survived more than most people could imagine. The image, Hollywood's manufactured tough guy for revenge films. The reality, a man who learned hardness in America's coal mines before he ever faced a camera. Number 9. Chuck Norris, the karate champion. Chuck Norris became the martial arts action star of the 80s, kicking his way through countless films before settling into the wholesome heroism of Walker, Texas Ranger. He eventually transcended even his own career to become an internet meme, a cultural shorthand for invincibility. To most audiences, he was simply the actor synonymous with martial arts movies. But Norris didn't learn martial arts for movies. He learned them while serving in the Air Force, then proved himself in actual competition. Chuck was the real deal before Hollywood discovered him, explains martial arts historian John Corcoran. Norris enlisted in the United States Air Force in 1958 and was stationed at Osan Air Base in South Korea. While there, he began training in Tang-Soo-Do, eventually earning his black belt. But unlike actors who train just enough for choreography, Norris continued after his discharge, competing professionally. Between 1968 and 1974, he won multiple karate championships, not movie fights, but actual competitions against other trained fighters. His record was documented, his victories legitimate. Before Hollywood came calling, Norris had already founded his own chain of karate schools, teaching the art he'd mastered. Acting was almost an accident, a side path from a career built on genuine martial arts excellence. The image, action star who learned martial arts for movies. The reality, legitimate champion who reluctantly became an actor. Number 8. Steve McQueen, the reform school kid. Steve McQueen was the king of cool, Hollywood's most effortlessly charismatic rebel. His trademark squint and minimalist acting style made anti-heroes iconic throughout the 60s and 70s. Audiences watched him in Bullet and The Great Escape and believed his toughness because it seemed to radiate from somewhere deep and authentic. What audiences read as cool detachment was actually the survival instinct of someone who'd fought his way out of genuine poverty and abuse. McQueen's toughness wasn't manufactured. He'd been fighting since childhood, notes biographer Mark Elliott. His mother was an alcoholic, his childhood chaotic and violent. By 14, he'd been sent to the California Junior Boys Republic, a reform school for juvenile delinquents. Before that, he'd run with street gangs in Los Angeles, learning to fight because the alternative was victimhood. In 1947, seeking escape, he joined the Marine Corps. But even there, his rebellious nature got him in trouble. Multiple AWOL incidents, demotions, time in the brig. Eventually, something shifted. McQueen earned redemption within the Corps and received an honorable discharge. He used his GI Bill to study acting, finding in performance the escape he'd been searching for his entire young life. Acting wasn't a career choice for McQueen. It was survival by other means. The image, Hollywood rebel playing dangerous characters. The reality, a former juvenile delinquent and Marine who genuinely understood rebellion and redemption. Number 7. Mickey Rourke, the professional boxer. Mickey Rourke brought a dangerous intensity to every role in the 80s, from 9½ Weeks to Angel Heart. His performances suggested barely controlled violence, a man always one provocation away from explosion. Critics praised his commitment to method acting, his willingness to inhabit the darkness of his characters. But Rourke's intensity wasn't method acting. It came from years in the ring where hesitation could mean unconsciousness. Mickey was a legitimate fighter before he was ever an actor, confirms boxing historian Mike Silver. Rourke started boxing at 12 in Miami, training seriously throughout his youth. He compiled a respectable amateur record in Florida circuits, learning to take punches and give them back. Even as his acting career took off in the 80s, he continued training. Then in 1991, at the height of his Hollywood fame, Rourke made a decision that stunned the industry. He left acting to return to professional boxing. Between 1991 and 1994, Rourke fought 8 professional fights, winning 6 with 2 draws. These weren't celebrity exhibition matches, they were sanctioned professional bouts against real opponents. He suffered serious injuries, a broken nose, a compressed cheekbone, damage that would eventually require extensive reconstructive facial surgery. When he finally returned to acting, his face bore the permanent evidence of his commitment to the sport he'd loved first. The image, actor who trained in boxing for authenticity. The reality, professional boxer who happened to become an actor, then returned to his first love despite the cost. Number 6. James Caan, the street fighter. James Caan exploded onto screens as Sonny Corleone in The Godfather, Hollywood's most memorable hothead. His portrayal of rage felt utterly authentic. The way he moved, the suddenness of his violence, the sense that his fury could detonate without warning. For decades afterward, casting directors hired him to play variations on that explosive intensity. What made Caan's violence so believable wasn't acting training, it was experience from New York streets where he'd learned to handle himself. Jimmy came from a rough neighborhood and knew how to fight. That wasn't performance, explains director James Toback. Caan grew up in Sunnyside, Queens, a neighborhood where toughness was currency, and backing down meant becoming a target. He fought on those streets as a kid, learning the kind of instinctive violence that comes from genuine threat. Later, he trained in martial arts and rodeo skills, but the foundation was already there, a willingness to use physical force that came from experience, not imagination. In 1994, decades into his career, Caan was involved in a serious confrontation in Los Angeles following a traffic incident. According to reports, he nearly beat a man severely. The incident reinforced what people in Hollywood had always known. Caan's reputation for toughness wasn't manufactured for the cameras. Fellow actors and directors confirmed throughout his career that his fighting ability was authentic, that the aggression they captured on film came from somewhere real. When directors needed genuine rage on screen, they knew Caan could access it without much acting required. His most memorable performances drew directly from instincts he'd developed long before anyone handed him a script. The image, actor playing explosive tough guys. The reality, a genuine street fighter from Queens who brought authentic violence to the screen. Number 5. Mr. T, the bodyguard. Mr. T became an 80s icon as B.A. Baracus on the A-Team and Clubber Lang in Rocky III. His mohawk, gold chains, and gruff catchphrases made him instantly recognizable, a pop culture phenomenon who transcended the shows and movies that featured him. To most audiences, he was larger-than-life entertainment. But before the catchphrases and TV fame, Mr. T was protecting actual celebrities from genuine threats, and his reputation for toughness was what got him hired. Mr. T wasn't playing a bodyguard. He was one of the most respected in the business, confirms celebrity security expert Gavin DeBecker. Born Lawrence Tureau in Chicago's roughest housing projects, he understood violence and poverty from childhood. After serving as military police in the Army, he became a professional bodyguard upon discharge. This wasn't part-time security work. Mr. T protected some of the biggest names in entertainment, including Steve McQueen, Muhammad Ali, Diana Ross, and Michael Jackson. In the late 70s and early 80s, he charged between $3,000 and $10,000 per day, an enormous fee that reflected his reputation. He won America's Toughest Bouncer competition, cementing his status as someone you didn't mess with. When Sylvester Stallone was looking for an intimidating opponent for Rocky III, he first hired Mr. T as his personal bodyguard. Then Stallone realized something. Why cast someone to play intimidating when you could just cast someone who actually was? Mr. T's character in Rocky III was literally based on his real persona, the same commanding presence he'd used to protect celebrities. The gold chains he wore weren't costume jewelry. They were discarded items from clients, which he wore as a warning to potential threats. Everything about his image came from his actual work, protecting people whose lives had genuine value and genuine danger. The image, larger-than-life TV character with catchphrases. The reality, elite bodyguard who protected the biggest stars in the world before becoming one himself. Number 4. Danny Trejo, the ex-convict. Danny Trejo has one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. The tattooed, scarred visage that's played countless villains and tough guys across hundreds of films. From Machete to his endless character roles, Trejo never needs makeup to look dangerous. His face tells a story before he speaks a word. But Trejo's dangerous look wasn't created in a makeup chair. It was earned in some of California's most violent prisons. Danny did serious time in serious places. San Quentin, Folsom, these weren't movie sets, notes criminal justice historian Dr. Robert Johnson. Trejo grew up in a rough Los Angeles neighborhood, falling into drug addiction at a young age. His first arrest came at 10 years old. Throughout his teens and 20s, he cycled in and out of California's prison system, serving time in some of the state's most notorious facilities, San Quentin, Folsom, Soledad, and others. In 1968, while incarcerated at San Quentin, he participated in actual prison riots. These weren't Hollywood choreographed fights. They were survival situations where violence was immediate and consequences were permanent. He became prison boxing champion in both lightweight and welterweight divisions, fighting other inmates in matches that had real stakes. In 1969, while still behind bars, something changed. Trejo got sober, finding a path out of addiction even within the prison walls. After his release, he became a drug counselor, helping others escape the cycle that had nearly destroyed him. In 1985, he wandered onto a movie set while working as a counselor for someone in the production. A director spotted him and recognized something authentic. This was what actual convicts looked like. He was cast immediately. Since then, Trejo has compiled over 400 film and television credits, building a remarkable career from the face and presence forged in places most people only see in nightmares. He uses his fame to continue helping with addiction recovery programs, turning his past into purpose. The image, character actor typecast as criminals. The reality, former convict who spent years in maximum security prisons before finding redemption through film and helping others escape the life he left behind. Number 3. Audie Murphy, the war hero. Audie Murphy was the baby-faced star of 1950s westerns, Hollywood's unlikely action hero. His youthful appearance and slight build seemed almost at odds with the tough guy roles he played. Audiences watched him in films like The Red Badge of Courage and dozens of westerns, sometimes wondering how this wholesome-looking young man became an action star. But Murphy's boyish looks concealed the truth. He was the most decorated American combat soldier of World War II. Audie Murphy wasn't playing a hero. He was one of the most genuinely heroic soldiers in American military history, explains military historian Stephen Ambrose. Murphy tried to enlist at just 17, lying about his age and getting rejected multiple times for being underweight and looking too young. When he finally got accepted, he fought across North Africa, Sicily, Italy, France, and Germany, seeing more combat than most soldiers experienced in entire wars. But his most famous moment came on January 26, 1945. In France, Murphy's unit was being overrun by a German company. With his men retreating and wounded himself, Murphy climbed onto a burning tank destroyer that could explode at any moment and used its machine gun to hold off the advancing Germans. For 1 hour, standing alone on a burning vehicle, injured and exposed, Murphy held his position. He killed or wounded an estimated 50 German soldiers, refusing to retreat until his ammunition was completely exhausted. For this action, he received the Medal of Honor, America's highest military decoration. But that was just one incident. By war's end, Murphy had received 33 total awards, including every combat award for valor that the United States offered, plus 3 from France and 1 from Belgium. He remains the most decorated American soldier in history. The war left him with what we now recognize as PTSD. He slept with a loaded pistol under his pillow for the rest of his life, never fully escaping the combat that had defined his youth. He became an actor not from passion but from necessity. He needed to pay bills. In 1955, he played himself in the film adaptation of his autobiography To Hell and Back, because honestly, who else could believably portray what he'd actually done? The image, baby-faced actor in wholesome westerns. The reality, the most decorated American combat soldier of World War II, whose genuine heroism Hollywood couldn't exaggerate even if it tried. Number 2. Ed O'Neill. The almost pro. Ed O'Neill is best known as Al Bundy, the lovable loser on Married with Children, forever reliving his glory days as a high school football star. Later, he found renewed fame as Jay Pritchett on Modern Family. His career has been built on comedy, playing everyman characters with warmth and humor. The irony of Al Bundy, a man whose life peaked in high school, became the foundation of a comedy classic. But Al Bundy's backstory as a high school football star who almost made it wasn't complete fiction. O'Neill genuinely was a college football player who nearly made the NFL. Ed was a legitimate college football player at a major program that's not common for actors, notes sports journalist Rick Tellender. In 1969, O'Neill signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers as an undrafted free agent. These were the defending NFL champions, one of the most dominant teams in professional football. He competed in training camp with men who were among the best athletes in the world, holding his own long enough to be taken seriously. He was ultimately cut before the regular season, but reaching an NFL training camp put him in the top fraction of 1% of college football players. Most never get that close. But O'Neill's toughness didn't end when his football dreams did. Years later, he began training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under the legendary Rorion Gracie. Unlike celebrities who dabble in martial arts for a few months, O'Neill committed fully. It took him 22 years of consistent training before he earned his black belt in 2007. A legitimate BJJ black belt is one of the most difficult martial arts achievements. The dropout rate is enormous, and the training is physically and mentally demanding. O'Neill continues training into his 70s, maintaining the physical toughness that first sent him to an NFL camp decades ago. Throughout his run on Married with Children, he performed many of his own stunts, using the athleticism he'd never lost. The image, comedy actor playing a washed-up jock. The reality, legitimate college athlete who made an NFL training camp and later earned a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, maintaining genuine toughness throughout his comedy career. Number 1. Clint Eastwood. The swimming survivor. Clint Eastwood is the man with no name, the face of Dirty Harry, Hollywood's most enduring symbol of masculine toughness across 6 decades. His trademark squint, his economy of movement, his ability to convey threat through silence, these became the template for cinematic toughness. Generations of actors have tried to replicate the presence Eastwood brought to the screen, that sense of controlled violence and unshakable confidence. But Eastwood's unshakable screen presence wasn't crafted in acting classes. It was forged in a genuine survival experience that would have killed most men. What people don't realize is that Clint survived something that statistically should have killed him before he ever became famous, notes military historian and biographer Patrick McGilligan. In 1951, during the Korean War, Eastwood was drafted into the United States Army and stationed at Fort Ord in California. He served as a swimming instructor and lifeguard at the base, a relatively safe assignment compared to combat deployment. But in September of that year, Eastwood was returning from a weekend pass as a passenger in a Navy bomber. The plane developed engine trouble and went down in the Pacific Ocean near Point Reyes, California. Suddenly, Eastwood and the other passengers were in freezing water, miles from shore. The initial crash was survivable, but what came next was the real test. Swimming several miles through frigid Pacific waters in darkness, with shore barely visible as distant lights on the horizon. Water that cold can kill within hours through hypothermia, exhaustion, disorientation, and cramping turn strong swimmers into drowning victims. Most people in that situation don't make it. Eastwood swam for hours through the darkness, fighting fatigue and cold, pushing toward those distant lights. He survived through a combination of his swimming ability, mental toughness, and sheer refusal to give up. That experience, facing death in cold water with nothing but his own will to survive, shaped everything that came after. After completing his military service, Eastwood used the GI Bill to study at Los Angeles City College, while working odd jobs as a laborer, a forest firefighter, a steel worker. His physical toughness came from real work, not gym training. When he finally transitioned to acting, directors noticed something different about him. There was a genuine confidence in the way he moved, an authentic self-assurance that couldn't be taught. Sergio Leone cast him in A Fistful of Dollars partly because of that authentic presence. Eastwood's minimalist acting style, the economy of movement, the stillness, the refusal to oversell emotion came from genuine self-assurance forged in survival. He never needed to prove his toughness because he'd already proven it to himself in the Pacific Ocean years before anyone knew his name. Throughout his career, Eastwood performed many of his own stunts, directed his own films, and maintained a level of control unusual in Hollywood. He continued directing into his 90s, still active on his ranch, still working with horses, embodying toughness not as aggression but as longevity, discipline, and self-reliance. Working with Clint, you understood immediately that his toughness wasn't performance, explained stunt coordinator Buddy Van Horn, who worked with Eastwood for over 30 years. He'd actually survived something extraordinary, and it showed in everything he did. The image, Hollywood's manufactured icon of masculine toughness, the squinting cowboy and hard-nosed cop who defined cinematic cool. The reality, a man who survived a plane crash in the Pacific Ocean and swam miles through freezing water to shore, then built a 6-decade career on the genuine self-reliance and stoicism forged in that moment when survival was anything but guaranteed. These weren't actors who trained for roles or studied toughness in workshops. They were men whose lives had already demanded genuine courage, resilience, and physical toughness before Hollywood discovered them. Their authenticity became their greatest asset in an industry built on illusion. The stunt coordinators and directors who worked with these men could always tell the difference. You can't fake the instincts that come from real survival, real combat, real streets, or real rings. In an era of manufactured action stars and carefully choreographed toughness, these men remind us what genuine resilience looks like. Which of these backstories surprised you most? Share your thoughts below. If you enjoyed learning the real stories behind Hollywood's toughest, like and subscribe for more authentic Hollywood history. Thanks for watching.